You do this every time you get behind the wheel. You think modern engineering makes your car immune to this abuse. You are dead wrong. This innocent-looking habit is silently scraping years off your engine's life. You are causing invisible destruction deep inside the block that eventually ends in catastrophic failure. We are revealing the single worst habit destroying your engine. Here are the 7 stages of engine suicide. Stop killing your car. The habit: high load on a cold engine. The habit is not idling too little. It is high load acceleration before the oil is up to temperature. There is a massive misconception in the automotive world. Internet advice tells you, just drive and go. Idling is a waste of gas. While it is true that you shouldn't idle for 20 minutes, drive and go does not mean drive fast. When you start your car after it has sat overnight, the oil has drained into the pan. It is cold, thick, and syrupy. The metal parts of the engine have contracted and shrunk. The clearances, the tiny gaps between moving parts, are loose and sloppy. When you pull out of your driveway and immediately mash the throttle to merge into traffic, or you rev the engine past 3,000 RPM to get the heater working faster, you are forcing the engine to perform acts of violence without protection. You are asking for 100% performance when the lubrication system is operating at 10% efficiency. You might not hear a noise today. You might not see smoke tomorrow. But inside the block, expensive components are grinding against each other. Let's break down exactly what happens, starting with the annoying maintenance issues and ending with total mechanical failure. We are about to save you thousands of dollars in future repair bills. If you care about keeping your car on the road and out of the junkyard, click that like button and subscribe right now. It helps us keep bringing you the real truth. Number 7. Fuel dilution and blow-by. We begin our countdown with a problem that doesn't break the engine immediately, but rots it from the inside out. It is called fuel dilution. Pistons are made of aluminum. The engine block is often made of iron or a different alloy. When the engine is cold, the piston is physically smaller than it is when it is warm. This means the gap between the piston and the cylinder wall is at its widest point. The piston rings, which are supposed to seal this gap, are stiff and cold. When you accelerate hard on a cold engine, the computer dumps extra fuel into the cylinders to keep the engine running smoothly. This is called open loop operation. But because the piston rings haven't expanded to seal the gap yet, that raw, unburnt gasoline squeezes past the rings. It blows by the piston and sprays directly into your oil pan. Gasoline is a solvent. It is designed to clean and strip away grease. When it gets into your oil, it attacks the lubricant. It thins the oil out. It breaks down the protective additive packages. If you make a habit of cold, hard driving, especially on short trips, your oil stops being oil. It becomes a thin, watery mixture of gas and sludge. This leads to increased wear on every single moving part. You are effectively washing the protection off your cylinder walls every morning. The cost? It starts with frequent oil changes, but ends with premature wear on camshafts and bearings because your oil has lost its film strength. Dirty oil is bad, but at least it is liquid. The next level of damage involves the oil becoming so thick and pressurized that it bypasses your engine's only defense system, sending raw debris straight into the bearings. Number 6. The oil filter bypass. Your engine has an oil filter for a reason. It catches the microscopic metal shavings, carbon, and dirt that circulate through the system. You assume that every drop of oil touching your engine has been scrubbed clean, but when you REV a cold engine, that assumption is dead wrong. Oil gets thicker as it gets colder. At freezing temperatures, 5W30 oil flows like maple syrup. When you rev the engine to 3,000 RPM, the oil pump spins furiously, trying to shove this thick syrup through the tiny paper pleats of the oil filter. The pressure spikes massively. The thick oil simply cannot squeeze through the filter element fast enough to feed the engine. If the flow stops, the engine dies. So, engineers installed a safety valve called the bypass valve. When the pressure gets too high, which happens every time you rev a cold engine, this valve snaps open. It allows the oil to skip the filter completely. This means you are now lubricating your precision engine bearings with unfiltered, dirty oil. Any metal shavings from the previous drive? They are getting blasted right back into the bearings. Any carbon grit? It is acting like sandpaper on your camshafts. You are essentially sandblasting the inside of your engine. The damage is invisible at first, but over 50,000 miles, your bearings will look like they have been attacked with a grinder. I want to know your morning routine. Be honest. Do you let the RPM drop before you drive off, or do you turn the key and immediately hit the gas? Tell me in the comments below. There is no shame. We have all done it, but we need to learn. Dirty oil causes slow wear, but the next item on our list causes physical leaks and blown gaskets because of a simple law of physics. Metal expands when heated, but it breaks when heated unevenly. Number 5. Thermal shock and gasket failure. Engines are made of different types of metal. The engine block might be cast iron. The cylinder head is usually aluminum. The bolts holding them together are steel. Here is the problem. These metals expand at different rates. Aluminum expands almost twice as fast as iron when heated. When you start a cold engine and drive gently, the entire block heats up slowly and evenly. The gaskets, the rubber and metal seals between the parts, can stretch and accommodate this growth. But when you drive hard on a cold engine, you create intense, localized heat in the combustion chamber, the cylinder head, while the bottom of the block remains ice cold. The aluminum head tries to grow rapidly, expanding outward. The iron block stays shrunk. This creates a shearing force. It drags the head gasket back and forth. It pulls on the intake manifold gaskets. It stresses the exhaust manifold studs. This is called thermal shock. Over time, this repeated scrubbing action shreds the gaskets. This is why you see cars with weeping head gaskets leaking oil down the side of the block. It is why you hear exhaust ticks from broken manifold studs. A head gasket replacement is a major surgery. It can cost $2,500, all because you couldn't wait 5 minutes for the metals to stabilize before hitting the highway on-ramp. Leaking oil is messy, but the next failure is auditory torture. It starts as a faint tick-tick-tick and ends with a destroyed camshaft that requires tearing apart the top of your engine. Number 4. Hydraulic lifter collapse. If you listen to an older car start up on a cold morning, you often hear a loud clack, clack, clack sound that eventually goes away. That is the sound of oil starvation in the top end. Modern engines use hydraulic lifters, or lash adjusters, to open the valves. These are tiny little pistons filled with oil. They need constant pressurized oil to maintain zero clearance between the camshaft and the valve. They are precision instruments with tiny oil ports the size of a pinhead. When your engine is cold, the oil is too thick to flow quickly through these tiny ports. The lifters cannot pump up fully. They remain partially collapsed. If you idle gently, this isn't a huge deal. The cam lobes gently tap the lifters until they fill up. But if you rev the engine while the lifters are collapsed, you are slamming the steel camshaft lobe against a loose metal lifter, thousands of times per minute. It is like hitting the valve train with a hammer. This impact destroys the hardened surface of the camshaft. It creates pitting. Once the smooth surface is gone, the cam lobe acts like a cheese grater, eating away at the lifter. Eventually, the tick doesn't go away when the car warms up. You have permanently damaged the valve train. To fix it, you need new camshafts and lifters. On a modern overhead cam engine, that is a $3,000 repair. We are getting into severe damage now. Number 3 involves the very heart of the engine. The pistons physically grinding against the walls because they grew too big, too fast. Number 3, piston scuffing and slap. We talked earlier about how pistons are small when cold, but they are also lightweight and absorb heat incredibly fast. When you floor the gas on a cold engine, the explosion inside the cylinder generates massive heat, sometimes over 1,000 degrees instantly. The piston crown absorbs this heat and expands rapidly. However, the cylinder wall, which is surrounded by freezing cold coolant, does not expand yet. So the piston gets bigger, but the hole it lives in stays the same size. If you put enough load on the engine, the piston expands so much that the clearance drops to zero. The piston physically rubs against the cylinder wall. This is called scuffing. It gouges deep scratches into the cylinder liner. It creates a condition called piston slap, where the piston rocks violently in the bore, damaging the skirts. Once a cylinder wall is scored, it is game over. You lose compression. You start burning oil, blue smoke pouring out of the tailpipe. You cannot fix this with an additive. You have to bore out the engine or buy a new engine block. You have effectively machined your engine to death from the inside out. Up next is a component that spins at 100,000 RPM. It is the most fragile part of a modern engine, and cold oil kills it faster than anything else. Number 2. Turbocharger bearing failure. Half of the cars sold today have turbochargers. Ford EcoBoost, Honda Civic, Chevy Trax, they all use turbos to make power. A turbocharger is a small fan that spins at insane speeds, up to 200,000 RPM. To survive, the shaft of the turbo floats on a thin film of oil. Here is the danger. The turbo is the furthest point from the oil pump. It is the last component to receive oil pressure. When you start a cold car, it can take anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds for thick, cold oil to reach the turbo bearings and establish a stable film. If you drive gently, the turbo barely spins, so this delay is fine. But if you accelerate hard, the exhaust gases spool the turbo up instantly. You are asking that shaft to spin at 100,000 RPM while the oil supply is still lagging behind, thick and sluggish. You are essentially running the turbocharger dry. The bearings overheat and score instantly. The seals blow out. This is why so many modern cars need new turbos at 70,000 miles. It isn't a defect, it is the driver. A turbo replacement is not cheap. The part is expensive and the labor is a nightmare. You're looking at $4,000 to replace a turbo that died because you couldn't wait 30 seconds in the driveway. A blown turbo is a tragedy, but the car might still limp home. The number one reason is the ultimate engine killer. It happens in a split second, it makes a sound like a shotgun, and it totals the car instantly. Number 1. Spun rod bearings. This is the nightmare scenario. This is the death of the engine. The connecting rod bearings connect the pistons to the crankshaft. They take the full force of every explosion. They do not use ball bearings. They use smooth, soft metal shells that glide on a wedge of pressurized oil. This hydrodynamic wedge relies on two things: flow and speed. When the oil is cold and thick, it does not flow well. It resists entering the tight gap between the bearing and the crank. If you apply high load, heavy acceleration to a cold engine, you are slamming the piston down with thousands of pounds of force. Because the oil is cold, it cannot flow into the gap fast enough to replenish the film. The wedge collapses. Metal touches metal. The crankshaft grabs the bearing shell and spins it inside the housing. This blocks the oil hole completely. Instantly, the rod begins to hammer against the crank. You hear a loud knock, knock, knock that gets faster with engine speed. This is rod knock. It is incurable. The crankshaft is ruined. The connecting rod is ruined. The block is likely ruined. You need a new engine. On a modern truck or performance car, a replacement engine can cost $10,000 or more, and it happens most often in the winter on on-ramps when impatient drivers demand power from an engine that isn't ready to give it. Why modern drivers think they are safe. You might be thinking, but my owner's manual says I don't need to warm up the car. Read it carefully. It says you don't need to idle. It usually says, drive gently until the engine reaches operating temperature. Drivers confuse drive gently with drive normally. Normal driving today involves merging onto highways at 70 miles per hour. That is not gentle. Also, your dashboard is lying to you. The temperature gauge usually measures the coolant water temperature. Water heats up very fast. Your gauge might show warm in 3 minutes, but the oil takes much longer to heat up, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes. So you see the needle in the middle, you think you are safe. You floor it, and you spin a bearing because the oil was still 100 degrees too cold. Your engine is a marvel of engineering, but it obeys the laws of physics. Cold metal is brittle. Cold oil is slow. Don't let your impatience cost you a new engine. Give it a minute. Let it warm up. It will return the favor by running for 200,000 miles. Click on the next video for more car knowledge. Like this video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.